A bugle cuts the blue norther. A giant Apache woman yanks a shaking map man under her coat. A torn seal exposes a captain for sale. Bells roll, horses explode. A chief drops. Through smoke and green fire, they fight for four winds, where a map might say it of a people, and the iron snake must bend. The north wind had teeth. It skinned a face raw and laid rime along a man's mustache. Eli Mercer felt it bite through his coat, through the wool and the mended shirt under that. His cracked hands stung on a wet rein. The survey wagons groaned across crusted drifts, iron-shod hoofs ringing dull on ice where the trail cut to rock. The hit came clean as a hammer. A shot, then three more so close they clapped like boards. The lead wagon slewed, mules screamed, men ducked, scattered. Love this tale? Hit like, share, and subscribe to keep the West wild. Eli's pony shouldered, jumped sideways, and the world fell out from under him. He slid off the edge of a wind-carved chute, bounced once, and rattled down 30 feet into a pocket of blue ice and blown snow. The breath left him. His chest burned. He hugged his field book tight against his vest, like it could keep him alive. Boots scuffed at the rim above. Shapes eased down, bandanas up, dusters stiff with frost. A revolver nose found Eli's breastbone. Papers, the big one said. Railroad papers. Maps. Eli tasted blood and cold iron. Ain't worth your trouble, he said. Just numbers. The man grinned around bad teeth. Numbers spend fine. Something dropped into the chute like a shadow torn loose. A tall woman hit the ice in a crouch. Moved once, and a rifle stock in a robber's hands wasn't a stock anymore. The second man swung and met her elbow. He went flat, breath gone. The third had time to blink. She took his wrist and turned it the wrong way. The colt jumped loose and skittered across the ice to Eli's boot. She straightened, taller than most men by a head, shoulders broad under a smoke-colored buckskin, hair braided tight with little bone and bead. Her breath steamed in the cold. Dark eyes weighed Eli like a problem to solve. He tried to push up, and the pain lit his ribs. He made it to a knee. Her English came spare and square. "Map man," she said, "need you." A bugle come the wind. Faint at first, then nearer, the kind of note that says men in blue are folding a line. From the ridge came the jingle of curb chains, the heavy hush of many animals on snow. Eli tipped his head, hearing that sound the way a rabbit hears hounds. "Cavalry," he said. "They'll—" "Not for me." She caught the collar of his coat and tugged him against the rock. Leather creaked. Tallow and cedar smoke rode her wool. She brushed at the drift with a cedar bough, wiping out the scuffle marks, then wedged him and his field book into a seam of stone hardly wide enough for two. Cold knife through him in little bright steps. His teeth chattered. She put an arm across his shoulders and hauled him closer, broad chest to his back. Her coat thrown half over him like a blanket. It wasn't tender. It was how you save a calf in a blue norther. He felt the heat of her, steady as a stove. The shiver eased a notch. "Much obliged," he muttered, throat rough. "Quiet," she said. "Breathe small." Up on the rim, a voice rolled down, carried easy in the desert air despite the storm. "She's close," the man called, educated vowels, officers wait. "Fan out," another bugle answered. Hoofs thudded above. Snow dust sifted from the rock lip, glittering. A cone of lantern light slid across the chute mouth, slow as a cat's eye. It paused, quivered, and started to swing back. She kept him tight to the rock until the lantern cone moved off and hoof thuds softened. Snow sifted from the lip like flour from a torn sack. Eli breathed shallow the way she'd told him. His ribs ticked pain with every beat. "Let me see," she said. He started to balk, then felt the steadiness in her grip and gave over. She slid a broad hand under his coat, found the swell along his side, pressed once, twice, reading him with her fingers. From a pouch she shook out bark shavings and a twist of some dark leaf. She chewed, spat into her palm, worked the mash with a dab of water from a skin, then spread the cool paste along his ribs with 2 sure strokes. The ache eased to a muffled throb. "Willow," she said, "takes pain. Not make you brave." "Reckon I wasn't angling for brave," Eli said. "Just enough to stand." Her mouth moved like the start of a smile and decided against it. Then she tugged the wool of her coat wider over both of them, the tallow smell strong and homelike. Above, a patrol clinked past. The officer's voice again, measured, unhurried. "Check the cuts." "I want sign Captain," Eli whispered. "Beaumont Kane if I don't miss it." "You know him." "Men like him," Eli said. "They draw lines and dare folks to cross." "His line on my people's neck," she said, flat as a shovel blade. Wind gnawed the seam. Their breath made a little fog in front of them and went away. She reached inside her shirt and pulled a half sheet, torn clean through a wax seal, the red stamped with an eagle and U.S. Land Office around it. She put it in Eli's hand. He held it to the slit of light. The paper was water-warped, but the marks read fine. Docket numbers, parcel descriptions along a proposed right-of-way, and in a clerk's neat hand a note. "Consider preferential patents for Captain B. Kane and Associates, per KW&R Company understanding." Eli felt heat rise in his face that didn't come from the shared coat. "Where'd you get this?" "Father Alonzo kept papers," she said. "Learned white law. Men came after he died, looked for trunk. I took half before they took rest." She tapped the broken seal. "Truth, even when torn, still cuts." He turned the half-letter, seeing the shape of what wasn't there. Names, dates that would tie a Mulger's clean oath to dirty ground. "A full copy would hang a man," he said softly, "or at least jerk his spurs." "Full copy in trunk at San Miguel," she said, "if not burned." "A beat. You draw borders." "We carry paper. Together, maybe law looks up." He stared at the white pinch of canyon above them, the way cold light pooled in the cut. He had hired on to mark grades and span arroyos. He had not hired on to weigh a man's soul, but the iron snake did not care about souls, and paper could be used to smother or to spare. "You're asking me to stand on the same side as you," he said. "I am asking you to stand with land," she said. Then, after a small breath, "And with me if your inside says yes." His mother's watch ticked in his vest, slow and patient. He heard the ticks between the wind's claws. "My inside's loud enough," he said. "All right." She nodded once, as if checking a box in her head. "When dark thick, we move," she said. "San Miguel by back gullies." "Name's Eli," he added, because it felt wrong to be nothing but a task in her mouth. She tipped her chin. "Talla Redbird." Boots ground above them again. A trooper's weight shifted on the rim. Powder fell on Eli's cheek like cold ash. The lantern came back, searching. Kane's voice nearer now. "She's a big one. She leaves a big track. Don't shame yourselves by missing it." Talla breathed against the nape of Eli's neck, slow and even. He matched her until the lantern slipped away. Minutes dragged into a rope of time. When the patrols passed off toward the ridgeline, she eased her arm from around him, tested the air, and slid out of the seam like water. She offered a hand as if it weighed nothing. He took it, rose careful, and felt the world tilt a little, then settle. They moved bent to the rock, Boots searching for purchase under the skim snow. She used a cedar bough again to comb their scuff marks away. At the throat of the chute she stopped, listening. In the distance where the survey stakes marched across the white flat, and whose sound cut the wind, a high knife-thin whistle that lifted the hair on Eli's arms. The train. Supply run pushing the winter schedule. A smear of red-orange bled up from the far cut as firebox light bounced on low cloud. The whistle took the air again, a longer call, and the snow around them glowed the way it does when lightning stutters. "Iron Snake," Tala said, not hating the machine so much as naming it for what it did. "Eat miles, eat ground, eat quiet. That line'll pull the cavalry like filings to a magnet," Eli said. "Eyes that way, not here. We can slip, we slip," she agreed. "Then run gullies." No crest, no silhouette. He looked once at the torn letter, then folded it into his field book where the paper would be safe between grades and bearings. The paste along his ribs had gone cool and numb. He could breathe again without tasting metal. Tala started, and he fell in at her shoulder. The whistle keened a third time, longer, closer, and lantern light from the grade threw a pale wash across the drift in front of them, stretching their shadows long and thin as wire. They slid off the lip and into the dark where the wind kept its own counsel. Behind them the bugle sounded, answered by another down the ridge. Ahead, somewhere under the old mission's crumbling bell, lay a trunk with the rest of a truth sharp enough to turn a captain's smile to stone. They came by the back gullies, belly-deep drifts in places, sage heads crusted white. San Miguel showed as a low, squatting shadow against the pale, its bell tower broken to a black tooth. Inside, the cold held like a kept vow. Dust lay thin on a long table, candle stubs in a clay dish. A trunk sat in a corner, rawhide straps stiff as fence wire. Tala tested doors, windows, then nodded. Eli worked the hasp with a survey nail and the thin blade he used to sharpen pencils. The lid groaned. Letters, land plats, a worn Bible, a roll of treaty pages brittle as pie crust. On the inside of the lid, Father Alonso had penciled a list in a careful hand. Parcels, dates, the names of men who came asking. Eli spread papers under a candle's weak light, wax puddled, sweet and faint. He found the match to his torn half, same seal, same docket string, the line about preferential patents clear and whole now. Captain Beaumont Kane's name neat as a church ledger. It felt like lifting a flat stone and seeing scorpions. Boot scrape in the nave. Eli's hand went to the Colt. Tala had already moved, knife low. A voice came first, old and easy as an oiled hinge. "Holster down, son." "It's Moses Pike. I brought a friend." Two shapes eased into the candle wash. Moses wore frost on his beard and calm in his eyes. With him a stocky man with dark hair and a Chiricahua face, coat patched but clean. "Half-Jack Ortega," the man said. "My mother's people called me something else." "This will do," Tala dipped her chin to both. "No more than that." "You chose a cold house," Moses said, rubbing his hands, then palming a coffee tin from his sock. "We can at least boil a wet comfort. May keeps a pot ready most days." "May?" Eli asked. "She minds this place," Moses said. "Bakes bread for whoever wanders. Rings that old bell to put backbone in a soul when she thinks the Lord requires it." Footfalls again. A woman in a shawl stepped from the side hall, hair in a gray knot, cheeks windburned. "Backbone's fine," she said, setting tin cups on the table. "Brains help, too." Her eyes flicked to Tala and softened a notch. "You're welcome, so long as you mean no harm." Men in Blue said different. "I don't much mind men in blue." Eli laid the papers out. May leaned to see, the candle picking a tremble in her hands that was not fear so much as cold. "We need a lawful trail," Eli said. Stamp at Fort Stanton, docket to Judge Hiram B. Lowell in Santa Fe. Numbers tied to things a court can't argue. Springs, ridges, a meeting of waters. This," he tapped the land office letter, "shows Captain Kane has a stake on the original grade. We set an alternate line that doesn't trespass your sacred ground, shorter in pain if longer in miles. Then carry the packet fast. Courier chain?" Half-Jack asked. "San Miguel to Las Vegas, then Santa Fe. Relay by stage and saddle both." "I can shadow that trail," Half-Jack said. "Cut across where the road crooks. See that it keeps moving." Moses poured coffee. It steamed like mercy. "Bounties are up," he said quiet. "Posters in Doolin's station. Redbird 1,000 cash. Mercer 500, alive or dead." The ink wasn't picky. May's mouth went tight. "I'll ring the bell if wolves sniff close," she said. "Old stone carries sound far." Tala said nothing. She was looking at the treaty roll, at a line that named a ridge in words not English. Her finger resting there like on a scar. Eli watched her and set his pencil to the map, pricking 3 clean points. Meeting of waters, Angel's Notch, 4 Winds Mesa. Then drawing a bowed line around them, hugging meadow and open grade, he wrote the rise and run in a neat, compact hand. "You can sell this to a rail boss," Moses said, reading the slope. "Less blast, fewer trestles." "And you can live with it," Eli said to Tala. She met his eyes and gave the smallest yes. The candle guttered. May cupped it, took it down to pin the wick. In the quiet, the mission breathed old dust and cold stone. Then a new sound mussed the stillness. The faintest leather creak outside, a saddle shifting. Half-Jack's head turned. Moses set his cup down without a clink. May blew the candle and let the dark fall like a blanket. "Strange horses," she whispered. "Been circling since dusk." They left San Miguel on gray light, slipping the back arroyo while May kept watch at the chapel door, hand on the bell rope. Frost smoked off the sage. The cold knifed clean. Half-Jack scouted ahead and came back twice with a palm-out warning. Strange hoof sign on the flats, shod horses, heavy men. They bent their track into broken country where snow hung in shelves off lava rock. By midday, they reached the winter camp, wickiups stitched with willow and canvas. Snow lipped high along the skirts. Smoke lifted thin and straight. Children's eyes followed Eli as if measuring whether he belonged. A pair of dogs ghosted between fires. Tala walked him to the center where an old man sat wrapped in a striped blanket, beads bright against brown, weathered hands. "Old Crane," Tala said. The chief's eyes were clear as creek ice. Beside him stood Gray Fox, shoulders narrow, jaw set. They listened while Eli unfolded his field book, laid the half-letter with the land office seal, then sketched 3 clean points with a carpenter's pencil on Father Alonso's cracked map. Meeting of waters, Angel's Notch, 4 Winds Mesa. "We pin the line to what can't be argued," Eli said. "Springs, ridge spines, a tree that's older than our grandfathers. Then we bend the railroad south and back again. Longer but easier grade, less blast. A judge will see sense if we give him something solid to stand up." Old Crane studied him, not his drawings first, but the man. "Small body," he said, in slow English. "Big heart." Words plain as elk tracks. Eli felt heat in his ears. He'd blame on the fire. Gray Fox tapped the torn letter. "Blue coat captain likes land that is not his," he said. "This paper is a fang with half a root. Find the rest, and it bites." "We have the rest at San Miguel," Eli said. "Half-Jack can move it into the chain. Fort Stanton stamp, then ride hard for Judge Hiram B. Lowell in Santa Fe." A boy stood off Eli's right shoulder, lean and hawk-faced, hair bound back with a strip of red cloth. Tala crooked a finger. "Little Huck," she said. "Good ears. He will watch the rim. If the enemy comes, he throws light." The council turned to work. Women bundled what would travel. Men stacked poles and covered coals. Tala's hands moved quiet as wind, tying, checking, passing strips of jerky into small hands. Eli showed Gray Fox his neat columns, bearings, grade, rise and run, while the elder named the land in Apache and pointed with 2 fingers where a rock leaned like a sleeping bison and where a spring never froze even in mean years. Mid-afternoon, they set out the first string of people toward Angel's Notch. Elders, mothers, children, a pair of ponies dragging a travois. The snow hid ice in places. At one choke, the creek had glazed over and drifted flat as a floor. Tala tested with her boot heel, and the crust frowned but didn't break. "Step light," she said over her shoulder. Eli followed her marks, breath a white thread. The ice sang under his weight, a thin glass note. Halfway across it went from song to a low groan and bowed. He stopped cold. Tala turned, came back 3 steps, and slid an arm around his waist, big and sure. She pulled him in until her coat and his were one heat. "Hold close," she said, voice small as the space between their faces. "Step light." They moved like that, one body, short steps, her weight spread, his toes kissing where hers had gone. The ice muttered, thought better of it, and held. On the far bank she let him go. He felt the wind at him again, and missed Zaya the loss. "Reckon I owe you twice," he said. She gave a piece of a smile. "Don't make me count." By last light, the first group reached cover in the black pines below Angel's Notch. Gray Fox started a smoke with spruce needles and a pinch of something that smelled like memory. Old Crane set his palm on Eli's book. Not heavy, just present. "You carry more than paper," the chief said. "You carry a way to speak to men who think only ink is true." Eli nodded, throat gone tight. A hawk's cry cut the ridge, too sharp, too even. Little Hawk on the high rocks answered his own call with a flare, a green star that hissed and dropped and burned in the snow beyond the camp. Then came sound, far at first, then climbing the valley sides, the ratchet of saddles, the clink of bit rings, men talking low. Down the throat of the draw a chain of torches snaked, orange on white, bending and straightening as they threaded the brush. Tala's face went stone. "Crowbone," she said, no question in it. Eli felt the cold in a new place, not skin, but deep. Torches kept coming, a river of fire in the little cups, and over them, like a fence post driven into the dark, a voice with a captain's iron. "Close the mouth of that notch." No one through the first snowflakes since noon began to fall, slow and fat, each one catching torchlight before it died. The valley was a white bowl rimmed in black fur. Torches walked the lip. Men in blue slid down the draws and posted on knolls, rifles cradled low. Captain Beaumont Kane sat a bay horse, as if carved there, cloak thrown back, brass neat even in the weather. To his right, lean and long in a smoke-gray duster, Crowbone watched with a hunter's quiet, one cheek raw where fire had kissed him before. Their words didn't carry, but their hands did, cut, hold, close. Prisoners were bunched in the hollow, women with blankets tight, boys stone-faced, elders set on sleds of willow. Horse lines stretched along the far side. 30 mounts haltered nose to picket rope, tails streaming in the gale, the whole string restless with the hot stink of men and fear. Tala lay beside Eli in a wind-scooped drift, their breath pluming and blowing flat. Her glove touched his sleeve once. "When they look away," she said, "you shoot. I cut rawhide. You pull old ones to the snow shadow. We move like fox." "Spook the remounts," Eli murmured, eyes on the picket line. "Let chaos work for better than it's worth." She gave the small nod that meant, "Go and live." He rolled the Colt in his hand, thumbed the loads out of habit, though he'd looked 5 times already. 6 rounds. The valley carried sound like a church nave. A single shot would ring in every ear. He let the cold go through him until his hands were quiet. A sergeant strode down the bunch of captives, counting, tapping his notebook with a pencil. On the rim, a bugle muttered a signal and drew eyes up valley to a file of late-coming troopers. In that narrow breath of inattention, Eli braced his forearms in the drift, sighted past the picket rope, and touched the trigger. The first shot cracked the bowl, bounced from rim to rim. Sparks leaped where the bullet struck rock. 3 horses went up on their hocks. A 4th tore at his halter. Men turned as one toward the sound, away from the prisoners, toward the horses, toward nothing at all. Eli shot again, a handspan higher, and the snapping echo made the whole line jump like a wire. Leather popped, a stake pulled, and 2 mounts ripped free, flinging snow and rope. Tala was already a ghost in the sidewash, sliding low along the rope line. A knife flick, rawhide parted. She took a child under one arm and an old woman's elbow with the other, and pushed them into the lee of a hummock. "Go," she breathed, and they went without looking back. Eli fired the 3rd round at the far end of the string where the horses had bunched. The bullet hit hard-packed snow. A spatter like hail rattled bellies. The line broke ragged. Animals surged, stamping, screaming, and hauling others down the rope like fish on a trot line. A young trooper lunged at a halter and caught a 4-foot too. The horse came over him, hoof iron, met bone with a sound Eli would remember when the nights turned long. His finger froze on nothing. The breath he drew scraped his throat. "We chose the lesser blood," he said, not sure he'd meant to say it out loud. "Only lesser." Tala's shadow. Adu stopped long enough to look back at him across the bowl. In the torchlight her face held sorrow, the way rock holds old water. "Less," she answered, wind steady. "And right." Orders ripped the air. "Get those mounts! 2 squads on the picket! You left flank! Flush the shooter out!" Kane's voice cut clean. Crowbone didn't shout. He pointed. Men began to move, not as a crowd now, but as a hand closing just where Eli lay, wedged in drift and sage. Eli took the 4th shot, quick and high, to widen the panic, then slid downslope, belly and elbows, into the shadow of a willow clump. Snow burned his wrists. Powder smoke bit the back of his tongue. On the rim a carbine answered or set. The shot wide. Hiss of a bullet in hard snow to his right. They were guessing range, walking fire toward his lane. Tala had 3 more free, 2 elders on a travois, 1 boy whose jaw set like iron when she put his sister's hand in his. She slashed another halter. A gelding bolted downslope, dragging 10 feet of rope, crashed through a knot of blue coats and carried half their attention with it. A lantern pitched and rolled. In the rock glare, Eli saw Kane's face turn, calm as a banker reading a ledger and twice as cold. Crowbone slid a hand along his rifle, notching a rear sight, eyes tracking not the horses, not the prisoners, the angle where smoke had jumped once, then again, then a 3rd time. He planted his boots in a stance that said the next one would be close. Eli eased the Colt up and sighted on a flat of snow beyond the nearest hocks. He tried to breathe with the wind, break the trigger in its lull, but the lull never came. A carbine spat. A fist of snow jumped 2 feet to his left. He felt the rounds whisper, a wasp's pass, along his ear. Another shot, this one low. Chips of ice stung his cheek. The lane was found. "Move!" Tala's voice, low and sharp. She had the old woman again, half dragging her into the scoop where Eli lay. He flung an arm around the woman's shoulders and hauled her in, then shoved her into the drifts dark. Tala's breath steamed into his face. Up close, he saw the frost stuck like glass in the seams of her braid. "How many?" he asked. "As many as snow will hide," she said. More later. Now you run, I've got 2 left. You have life left, she said, and the knife was gone again, and she was already slipping back toward another knot of bound rope and frightened eyes. Eli rolled, let gravity take him another 10 feet to a cut bank, and felt the slick ice under the new powder. The Colt was a weight with edges in his fist. On the rim, Crowbone made a small gesture, and 2 men split off, low and quick, straightening toward Eli's drift like hounds taking scent. The distance had shortened to where a hurried shot could count. He looked once at the prisoners, the boy shoving his sister behind a sled, the elder biting down on a prayer, Tala's blade bright and gone, and then at the horses. Chaos had a life of its own now. It would run a minute more without him. He slid deeper under the willow shelf, snow brushing his chin, and felt the ground hum with hooves. A trooper's shadow hit the drift in front of him. Another's boots thumped from the right. The lane had tightened to a crease. Eli drew a breath that tasted of tallow and smoke and winter, and let it out slow, letting the story of the valley shrink to front sight. Rear notch, pale snow beyond. "Shoot her there," a voice barked, close enough Eli could feel the shape of it. He lifted the Colt an inch, angle changing, and the dark around him lit with the flat flare of a carbine muzzle. The carbine's flash burned white on the snow. The ball hissed past Eli's ear and slapped into the drift behind him. He rolled, small as he could make himself, and let the willow shelf hide him. The Colt felt heavy and sure. 2 rounds left. He slid the muzzle to an angle where the picket rope showed black against packed white, and broke a shot. The bullet cut the rawhide. The end snapped like a whip. 3 more horses ripped loose and slammed the line. Stakes jumped. Men swore. A lantern flew and shattered. Kerosene flamed out in a flat yellow fan. For a breath the bowl turned daylight. Eli saw everything at once. Captain Kane on the bay, cloak thrown back, expression calm like he was tallying ledgers. Crowbone below him, rifle canted, eyes already past the fire at the crease where Eli lay. And in the press of prisoners, old Crane stepping forward with his blanket thrown wide as if to cover the whole camp. "Back!" the chief told his people, voice worn but iron. "Behind me!" Crowbone didn't blink. He lowered the rifle and drew a long-barreled Colt, as casual as a man choosing a different tool. The shot cracked neat as a knuckle. Old Crane's shoulders rocked. He took one more step to put himself where he meant to be, in front, and then he sat very gently in the snow like an old man easing to a stool. The blanket bled dark. Tala made a sound Eli had never heard from a human throat. It wasn't loud. It was the tight braided thing inside a person breaking. She hit the line like a flood, knife quick, rawhide popping. A boy's hand found his sister's and shoved her behind a sled. Eli lifted the Colt and took his last shot high at a swinging torch. It burst, pitched, and set a ragged banner of flame to running across a canvas wall. Horses chose panic again. They reared, bit, bolted, ropes snaking their heels. A trooper went down on his knees and vanished in churning iron. From far off, so far the air should not have carried it, but winter does what it pleases. A deep bell rolled, one beat, then another, the old mission's tongue finding the metal in 3 long strokes. The sound climbed the firs, slid the rim, and fell into the bowl like weather. Stock-hate bells. It got into them under the skin. A half-dozen mounts, still tied, went up as one, and tore the last of the picket free. Men ran at them, swearing, coats flapping. The formation that had been a tidy noose became a handful of loose rope and bad intentions. "May," Eli breathed. Not sure if the word left him, he could feel that iron note in his ribs. "Move!" Tala's breath scalded his cheek. She shoved an old woman at him, light as a bundle, bones like kindling. and then she was gone again, a long shadow and a flash of steel. He dragged the elder into the drift's lee, rolled her into the hollow, and came up into a crouch. Crowbone slid through the chaos like he'd drawn the map himself. The old sentry scar on one cheek, a new red stripe crossing it raw. His eyes found Tala, because they were made to find her. He smiled with half his mouth and came on. Eli ran, not away, across. He cut the shortest line he could draw between Crowbone and Tala, and the only courage he owned, stupid, fast, and pointed. The shattered lantern had licked a low willow into fire. He tore a limb out of the flame, the pitch catching, and when Crowbone pivoted to read the new angle, Eli swung. The brand hissed and smacked. Fire wrote another mark on Crowbone's face, bright and ugly, over the old. He howled, hand up, Colt swinging wild. A shot tore snow at Eli's boots. The smell of burned hair and pitch and winter hit hard enough to taste. "Come on." Tala's hand was iron on his collar. She yanked him so hard his feet lagged. "West Couloir." She pointed where the slope broke into a narrow throat, wind-scrubbed, rimmed with rock ribs, a way out if you were quick and small, or had a hand like hers. They ran bent, gunfire stitched behind them, wide and whining off stone. A horse crashed across their path, rope trailing, eyes rolled to white. Tala slipped it like water, Eli on her heel. Breath burned his throat cold and hot together. The couloir took them in, tight, steep, slick under powder. She went first, driving her weight into each step to kick holds, then hauling Eli by the wrist when his boots slid back. Halfway up the world took a breath and went quiet in that way it does, when men reload and choose who to kill next. Eli heard Kane's voice carry clean, "Hold the rim." "Hounds to the couloir, I want the woman hounds," answered, thin and hungry. Their bay came up the rock like thread through cloth. Tala didn't look down. She set her shoulder into a rock rib and shoved Eli past. "Left fork ahead," she said between breaths. "You take it. Down to the creek cut. Hide. 3 days. San Miguel." He caught her forearm, glove rough under his fingers. "We both take it." She shook her head once, and hard. "No, they follow me. You carry law." Her eyes were black glass in the gloom. "Don't die." He wanted to laugh because he didn't have the talent for that request, but his throat wouldn't work. "Reckon I'll try." They reached the split, a knife seam left, a steeper slot right. Tala put him into the left with both hands, a push that said she'd decided and he'd be a fool to argue. Boots and dogs clattered below, echo stacked on echo. She shoved her braid back with the back of her wrist, cracked a smile that showed no teeth. "Meet me under the broken bell," she said. Then she turned and took the right-hand slot. Uphill like a deer on rock, long legs eating grade, knife low, shoulders set. Eli slid left into the dim and felt the couloir close his shape, snow rubbing his coat. Behind him the hounds' voices climbed, and a man's, Crowbone's or some other hunter's, ripped a command to cut the left. Eli flattened to the wall and let 2 troopers claw past him, bent over their own legs, eyes on Tala's trail, because that's where the captain's money lived. Their steam breath brushed his cheek and was gone. He moved again, slow, careful, edging down into the creek, cut where alder and shadow and the low run of water under ice might hide the sound of his heart. At the lip he looked back once. On the skyline a shape paused. A tall woman with her coat pulled tight, hair a black line down her back, knife a length of night in her hand. She didn't raise it. She didn't need to. Then she went over the rim and was gone into the high wind. Kane's hunt cry rolled the bowl, clean and cold. The bell at San Miguel answered it across miles with a stubborn human note. The hounds found the couloir proper, and bayed like winter itself had teeth. Night took him down the creek cut and kept him. The poultice on his ribs went to sleep, then wore off. Each breath ticked a sore tooth under the bone. He moved slow, boots feeling for stone under the skim ice. After a mile the cut opened to scrub and broken snow. A shape slid out of the juniper and put a hand on his sleeve. "Easy, map man." The voice was smoke and gravel, half Jack Ortega. "You're dragging your left like it owes you money." "Ribs," Eli said. "Some of 'em don't like me?" Half Jack nodded once. "River changes course. You float different." He jerked his chin west. "Deer trail. We'll skirt Doolin's station while the iron men count their sleep." They climbed in the black. The trail was thin as a thought, shouldered into shale where a misstep meant a long, cold slide. Half-Jack moved like a memory of the place. Twice he raised a palm and Eli crouched, letting patrol shadows pass along the flats below. Men on company horses, lanterns hooded, snow puffing off fetlocks. Far off, the grade glowed faint where the work fire licked the low clouds. A snatch of talk came up thin, pay ledgers, culvert timbers, a foreman cussing a frozen pin. They topped a spine at gray-blue first light. To the east lay Doolin's station, a knot of sheds and bunks, a corral full of remounts, the company office with its little flag. Men moved like cold ants. Half-Jack didn't look long. He set them down the lee side, through Pinyon and Deadfall, and into the back arroyo that took them home to San Miguel. The mission held its cold in the day, same as in the night. Smoke thin as thread rose from the side room. May Collins opened the door before they knocked, shawl tight, eyes bright and tired. "Get in out of that," she said, and made a path with her arm. Coffee steamed on the stove. Blankets waited by the hearth. Eli drank 2 cups, his hand steadied. He set his field book on the long table and squared it by the edge, because his mother had taught him to square things. Half-Jack took the chair at the corner where he could see the yard through the broken pane. He set a little stone bear on the table like a man laying down a card. "We number your packet," he said, tapping Eli's book. "We wax what needs wax. Routes San Miguel to Las Vegas to Santa Fe. I'll cut across arroyos so the pouch stays ahead of any man with a poster. Fort Stanton first," Eli said. "I need their stamp on the plats and on the affidavit. Judge Hiram B. Lowell won't lift an eye without it." May set bread and tallow on a tin plate. "You boys can talk law while you chew," she said. "The Lord hears both." The door breathed cold and stayed open. A tall shadow filled the frame, coat frayed, hair iced along one braid. Tala Redbird stepped inside and shut the wind out with her back. She was thinner than 2 nights ago, but she stood easy and whole. Frost broke from her sleeve when she pushed her hair back. "Under the bell," she said to Eli, and a piece of the tightness in his chest let go. He didn't reach for her. He wanted to. He gave her coffee instead. She drank and closed her eyes a breath. Then she set the cup near his book and leaned on the table with both hands, reading the new lines he had penciled, the bold alternate grade that but looped south through winter meadows and came back clean. "Grade?" she asked. 2% where the cut was 4, Eli said. "Less blast. Cheaper timber. No trespass on the sacred ridge. We anchor it to meeting of waters, Angel's Notch, 4 Winds Mesa. A man can't argue with a spring that don't dry." She nodded, tapping each mark like counting heartbeats. "Men argue with anything. But what are winds?" They worked by lamplight, 4 heads in a small circle. Eli drawing, Tala naming land the way you name kin, Half-Jack laying out the courier times, May folding paper and tying twine with neat old lady knots that would give a clerk pause before he cut them. Eli wrote the cover, letter in, tight, plain hand. No flourishes, only bearings, chainage, legal descriptions, and one sentence a judge could hold. An alternate line that serves commerce without breaking treaty ground. May set red wax to warm on the stove lid. Half-Jack checked his cinch and oiled his stirrup leathers in the doorway. "I'll ride dusk," he said. "Less eyes." "You'll ride fed," May answered, and pushed a second plate at him. They sealed the first 6 pages, numbered the backs in pencil, wrapped the packet in oiled cloth. Eli pressed the land office letter to the top where it would be the first thing a Stanton clerk would see. The whole letter this time, not the torn half, the one that spelled Captain Beaumont Kane right down the line. He felt a small satisfaction that was not joy. Paper cut both ways. He hoped this time it cut him toward right. Dawn put tin light on the yard. Snow sat fresh on the sill. May snuffed the lamp and pinched the wick clean. The room seemed to exhale. Half-Jack stood, rolled his shoulders, and caught his hat. "River turns," he said to Eli. "You turn with it." Eli cinched the packet tight in a canvas pouch and handed it over. "Don't let it drown. It swims," Half-Jack said, and slung the strap across his chest. A sound in the stillness. Not a bell, not the train. A soft, slow crunch of weight on cold. May's head turned. She went to the broken pane, lifted the edge of the curtain with 2 fingers, and looked down at the step. Her breath smoked the glass. "Tracks," she said. "New ones. 2 horses, heavy riders. They walked 'em quiet, and they're sitting their saddles out of sight." Tala's hand found the knife on the table without looking. Eli reached for the packet out of habit, and had to remind his fingers it was already gone. May let the curtain drop. She moved to the lamp and didn't light it. Her voice went low and even, the way a woman speaks to bees and children. "They're here," she said. May didn't waste a word. She laid a palm on the bell rope and didn't ring, just held it like a threat. Half-Jack slipped out the back with the pouch under his coat, low and fast into the arroyo. Tala swept one glance around the room, took the knife, and touched Eli's sleeve. "Now." They ghosted the side door, crossed the yard where snow lay sifted like flour, and slid into the wash that braided behind the mission wall. Breath smoked, leather whispered, then behind them a saddle creaked where a man eased weight to get warm, and didn't. May shut the door and vanished from their world. The arroyo bled into broken country, a tangle of basalt knobs, pinyon, and brush. Threads of people joined them out of the dark, one by one, like deer coming to assault. Gray Fox first, with his stick, and a boy shouldering a bundle. Then 2 mothers with children tight against their skirts. Little Hawk stepped out last, eyes bright, a flare tube slung at his hip, chin set like a young tree in wind. "4 winds," Tala said. "Move quiet." They moved. Snow hissed under moccasin and boot. The cold went to the bones that had already been cold a long time. Eli walked beside Gray Fox and took the old man's elbow when the ground tilted. No talk, just hands when needed. Little things that counted. By midnight the land rose into limestone. The sage thinned, replaced by pinon smelling green, even in this hard season. Rock showed tricks here, shelves and chimneys, pockets cut by water you couldn't imagine now. Tala found a slit that didn't look like anything until you were inside it. Cold breathed out of it, clean, wet, steady. "Karst," Eli said under breath. "Caves." "Good," Tala answered. "Stone eats sound." They filed in. The air changed from knife to damp. Their white breath curled against rock and died. Eli struck a match and cupped it. The walls glimmered honey and bone. Water wept from seams and froze in beards fine and glassy. Tala took ash from a fire pan she carried, a greasy black ghost of old smoke, and with a cedar switch brushed their tracks flat where dust took prints then dabbed ash swipes where he would never have left them. False sign for hungry eyes. Men read ground, she said. We write a bad story. Eli laid his field book on a knee and sketched by match flare, left branch narrowing, right branch dropping, a third that turned back on itself. He went to oiled paper for the map proper, pencil stiff in the cold. He marked a spring chamber where the rocks sweated, a little fall that sang one note, a room with a roof low enough to make a tall man bow. Gray Fox leaned close and named each place in Apache and English where he could. Eli wrote both. They kept the fire the size of a hand. Resin smoke would tell tales. Children wrapped in wool lay in a line like pups and slept the way the worn-out sleep, dead to gun and law and worry a while. Tala moved among them, tucking in a stray hand, cinching a scarf, pressing a little slab of tallow into a palm for later. The work of mercy was plain and unremarkable. It stayed. Near dawn, a scout slid back down the passage, face white with dust and fear. "Riders in the pinyon," he breathed. "They bring dogs." "Smell men." Tala lifted her head like a she-wolf and listened with her whole body. She nodded once. "We split." Warriors lay echoes. "Old ones climb." "Climb," Eli said, hearing his ribs complain at the word. Gray Fox pointed his stick at a black seam up the chamber wall, a chimney punched ages ago when water and time took a notion. Frost rhymed the holds. Above, faint and far as a rumor, there was a hint of day. "High door," the elder said. "Out to the mesa." "Hard going. Good wind up top. Hounds don't climb on rope." They braided a rope out of thorn and yucca, old women's hands working, a boy's small fist steady as he held the end. Eli anchored the first loop and tested it with his weight. It creaked, but held. Tala went first, because that is what she is. She planted boot and palm, fed rope through her fist, and climbed with a patience that was strength disguised. The wall wept cold on her knuckles. Her breath came slow, white even. At a ledge 20 feet up, she set the loop and halt. Little bodies went past him hand to hand, shoes skidding, hearts hammering, faces set to the work. Eli climbed, then braced, then reached, when a young mother's boot slipped and her eyes went starry. He had no right to how strong he felt in that moment, but his hands did what they were asked. Gray Fox came last of that tranche, light as a story, breath whistling, eyes laughing at his own bones. "Small mountain," he said, tapping Eli's shoulder. "Hard to climb, worth it." They made a relay, the chamber below filled with the hum of people doing a thing too big for them and doing it anyway. Somewhere down a side branch a stone rattled. Another answered. Voices slid along rock like water. The dog's bay came thin and nasty through the stone. Wrong in this place. Tala called down once. "2 more?" Her voice wasn't tired. It was sure. She took the rope again and went. Halfway up her boot, found nothing where it remembered something. Ice had peeled. Stone spalled. Her hand went for a new hold. The wall broke a sheet of frost into her palm and slicked her grip. She slipped, boots scrabbling, heels slicing a line in rhyme. Eli didn't think. He leaned out, belly to rock, ribs screaming, and snatched. His fingers closed on her wrist just above the rawhide wrap. Her weight hit him like a mule's shoulder. Pain went white and hollow in his side. He locked his other hand on the rope and made himself a knot. "Easy," he said, though nothing was easy. He felt her gather. "Pull," she said. He pulled it. She pushed with her toes at nothing and made it something, found a nub, shoved, and came up into his arms. For a breath they were close enough he could count the ash in her hair and the tiny spots of blood where thorn had kissed her knuckles. He felt the old wild want to keep her there. He did not listen to it. He shoved her past him onto the lip and laughed once, because the body will do that when it lives. "Fool," she said, and the word meant good. Smoke found them then, not theirs. Sweet and sharp, resinous. Someone below had kindled green pinon to make a thick, mean cloud. A voice rode under it, flattened by rock but still crowbones. "Smoke 'em out!" "Move," Tala snapped. She shoved children and elders into the slot above and went back down 2 steps to fetch the next breathing weight. "Wait," Little Hawk said, eyes alive. He pulled the flare tube from his belt, cracked the cap, and struck it on stone. Green fire woke like a comet in his fist, spitting. He jammed the little rocket into a side vent and let it screech. It went buzzing down the wrong branch and blew color and smoke deep where the cave bent away. Men shouted in that branch. Dogs bayed at a lie. Crowbone swore like a man who'd grab smoke if he could. "Good boy," Gray Fox said, not moving his mouth, and pushed Little Hawk's head toward the ladder, so no one would see his grin. The smoke swelled, warm and ugly now, stinging eyes and telling lungs to hurry. The last 2 elders came up on the thorn rope with hands like paper. Eli set his shoulder under a hip and shored a foot with his palm. He counted beats and breaths and prayed without making the words, which is still praying if a man means it. The rope came up empty. The chamber below coughed white. Tala's braid appeared, and then the top of her head, and then her eyes, black and shining in the sickly smoke light. She planted her hands, laughed once at the hurt of it, and rolled onto the ledge beside him. Behind her, the cave spoke a different tongue. Rock ticked, pebbles pattered. Somewhere close, a sheet let go, clattered, and pitched into dark. The smoke hole above them dimmed, then brightened, then dimmed again, as dust danced in the light. Then they turned as one toward the chimney mouth. A shadow crossed it. Not dog, not child, not wind. Broad shoulders, a long coat with the hem burned ragged, a hat brim white with frost. The shape crouched in the smoke hole and filled it like a plug. Tala's fingers found her knife. Eli felt for the empty place on his belt where the Colt wasn't and set his hand to rock instead. Stone slid. A chunk came down and shattered at their boots. The shadow leaned, slow and certain, and spoke down the hole in a voice that had smiled at killing before. "Thought I'd find you here," the man said. "Climb's shorter than the money, but I don't mind." The man in the smoke hole grinned, for frost filmed his brim. The grin never reached his eyes. "Thought I'd find you here," he said, breath slipping white around the words. The rock above him ticked. Eli felt it more than heard it. The hollow to one side, the tight seam along the other, karst. Talks to a man who listens. "Shelf," he whispered. "That ledge is floating." Tala didn't look at him. She looked where he'd named and put her knife away. She braced both palms to the seam, set one boot on a nub, and heaved. Gray Fox slipped his stick under a lip and levered like a fenceman prying a post. The shelf moved the width of a breath. Stone dust fell like flour on Crowbone's hat. He swore and reached, and that was weight enough. The ledge let go with a cough. It dropped in a flat slide and slammed the hole full. Dust thumped the breath out of the chamber. Smoke boomed back like a bellows kick. Voices below went sharp and small. "Go," Tala said, already hauling a child to the last holds. They rose into a wind that knifed the lungs clean. The world widened to white and sky. Four Winds Mesa lay lean and scoured, rim rock like broken teeth. Snow combed into ribs by a steady hand. They found the lee of a boulder big as a freight wagon and put the people there. Backs to stone, faces to a small, stingy fire. The smoke ran flat and thin, a ribbon the wind couldn't bully. Eli set his field board on his knees. He had no table, so he made one out of his lap and a flat of cedar. His pencil came up obedient as a trail broke horse. Meeting of waters. He pinned it with a circle and a dot. Angel's notch, a triangle for the saddle in the ridge. The mesa itself he gave a cross where 4 lines of weather met. He wrote bearings, chainage, elevations, tied each to a thing a judge could not call fanciful. a spring that ran in mean years, a granite turtle, a dead-standing pine with 3 lightning scars. Tala crouched beside him, naming land the way you say kin, soft and exact. Here, winter grass. There, place where my mother gathered willow. This stone men do not sit upon. It belongs to old stories. He drew what he dared and wrote what the court would bear, and in the margin he made quick sketches, slope face, willow bank, the notch's lip, so some clerk could see with his eyes as well as his rules. Gray Fox watched, nodding once when Eli's line found the land true. Bootfalls came up the lee. Moses Pike walked out of the wind with his beard full of rhyme and a calm you could set a cup on. Half-Jack ghosted behind him, hat pulled down against the sting. "You cut your own chimney," Moses said, eyeing the dust on Eli's coat. "Good. Hounds will waste an hour debating it." He squatted and warmed his hands. "You got something fit to show a man with a seal?" Eli slid the packet from under his coat and spread it in order, the plat, the notes, the affidavit he'd written in a tight, plain hand. He placed the land office letter last, whole now, seal impressed clean as a boot heel. Moses took Father Alonso's ledger leaf from his own pocket and laid it beside. Same docket string, same parcel talk, same clerk's prim hand, binding Captain Beaumont Kane to patents along the original grade. "Seal's the same. Hand," Moses said. Alonso wrote names. And when they came sniffing, 2 witnesses, if you count the dead honest. "I count him," Eli said. Half-Jack checked the sky the way a man consults a watch. "We ride it first gray," he said. "Fort Stanton stamp, then lash it to a stage that won't wait for nobody. Las Vegas by nightfall, if the road don't break. Santa Fe sundown after that. Judge Hiram B. Lowell reads quick if you put plain work in front of him." "We anchor him to it," Eli said, tapping the map. "Water, ridge, monument, and an alternate line that carries freight without breaking treaty ground." Moses lifted the plat to the wind. "Read the grade the way a farrier reads a hoof. 2%, he said. "Cheaper timber, less blast. A boss who's not blind will see dollars not spent and think himself a genius." "Longer," Half-Jack said. "Longer ain't always worse," Moses answered a shine. "I've lived long. I should know." They ate little jerky that fought the teeth, beans warmed as much as the breeze allowed. The children slept in bundles. Gray Fox took a pinch of something from a leather pouch and worked a little smoke into the wind. Words in it you couldn't hear but could feel. Night thinned to a stale blue. The cold got meaner with it, the way coal does when it smells dawn. Eli's jaw worked against the shiver. His ribs ticked like a bad clock. He set the pencil down because his hands had gone clumsy. Tala slid close without ceremony and threw half her coat over him, a big square of wool that had known weather and beasts. "Closer," she said, matter of fact. "Cold steals soft men first." He didn't make a joke. His teeth had no time for jokes. He leaned in until her heat reached him, deep and slow. "Let me hold you close," he said into the wool, the words rough and plain, "till first light." She tipped her brow against his temple. "Close," she said. "Boots on." They sat like that while the wind looked for a way through and didn't find it. The shiver ran out of him by inches. He could feel her breathing, quiet and steady as tide. Little Hawk kept watch with his flare stick across his knees, face turned to the dark where hound voices had been. They were quieter now. Stone and bad air take the courage out of dogs, same as men. First gray came. Frozen brush shone like glass. Moses stood, knocked his hands together to wake them, and took the sealed packet Eli had wrapped in oiled cloth. May's neat knot wasn't on it. She was miles away. But Eli tied the string the way she had taught him last night, square and true. Half-Jack slung his own pouch under his coat. Route? Eli asked, because saying it out loud made it more real. South face to the old mail trace, Half-Jack said. Cut the creek to dodge patrols. Stanton by noon if the mule keeps its feet. Moses grinned under the rhyme. This ain't my first parcel, he said. I'll hand it man to man and get names to swear by. If I fall, the boy shadows. He jerked his head at Half-Jack. You won't fall, Gray Fox said, not as a wish, as a line of fact laid down in the dirt. They hugged the two men, the way men in hard places do, awkward shoulders, a hand thumped twice. Tala put her palm on Moses's chest, over the packet. Carry truth upright, she said. I was raised that way, he answered, and stepped into the wind with Half-Jack at his quarter. Silence came back, big and plain. The people breathed it for a minute like a rest earned. Eli rolled the field board, slid it under his coat, and stood with the ache in waking. Tala's face had gone spare again, back to work. A whistle floated in thin from far off, the kind of thin sound cold carries farther than it should. Not the long, clean call of a run. Two longs, a short, then a long again, as if somebody with a timetable had turned it into talk. Eli felt the hair lift on his neck. Hear that? Tala did. Her eyes went to the south edge where the grade lay like a gray scar under miles of white. The whistle spoke that odd measure once more and died. Parley, she said, not believing in it, naming it anyway. The wind shifted a point and brought them the faint chuff of a stack working careful against drifts. Somewhere a man raised a flag he'd call truce and mean ambush, or maybe he'd mean talk. Winter makes liars and saints out of both. Boots on, Tala said again, but softer this time. We'll see which it is. The whistle died in the cold, like a lie that couldn't hold itself up. Wind combed the snow flat and mean. Down in the timbered folds south of the grade, dark motes moved, a cavalry file easing along the creek. Men hunched, hats rimmed with rime. No rush. That kind of patience meant a plan. Not a truce, Half-Jack would have said, if he'd still been here. He wasn't. He and Moses had already taken the south face, two specks angling for the mail trace and the first stamp in Stanton. Tala watched the low country a long breath and then turned from it. We don't stand and make graves, she said. We move the spine. Quiet. They broke the lee. The wind hit like a pail of nails. Gray Fox raised a cedar bowl on 3 fingers. He pinched something bitter into it and lit it with a coal. The smoke went up thin and white, then braided with the blown snow until you didn't know which was which. He spoke over it in a voice like worn leather, small words, old ones. Men took hats off. Women bowed their heads. Children went still, the way they do when the room changes, even if they don't know why. For old Crane, Gray Fox said in English at the end, so the white man would know it, for those who walked ahead. For feet yet to walk, they left a pinch of bread and a bead in the snow, and stepped out along the rock spine single file. The ridge ran north like a laid-back saw blade, broken teeth and blue shadow. On either side, the world fell off into coulees and jackstraw timber. It was a way made for goats and men who had run out of level. Boots close, Tala said, hands when needed. Eli kept the field roll under his coat and Gray Fox's elbow in his palm. Little Hawk ranged to the right where a fall would be a long white ride. They didn't talk. The snow squeaked under weight, the sound a man hears in old winter. A magpie shot across the gap and scolded, then went quiet. Below and back, a bugle tested a note and quit it. At the first saddle, they found sign, 3 hoof cuts in the crust that hadn't been there yesterday, set careful where a man on a good horse had paused to look up at them. In the wind shadow of a rock a glint showed, small, round, brass, tired to dull. Eli crouched and pried it from the ice with the blade he used for pencils. A cavalry medal, laurel and eagle, the ring clean worn by a habit of a man who touched it often. Around the edge, stamped neat, Cowboy and Arco, railmen's letters riding a soldier's pride. He held it up. Gray Fox looked once and let his mouth go thin. Tala's jaw worked. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. A thing like that says its own piece. Some men wore two loyalties and liked how both paid. Proof he stood here, Eli said, voice low. Proof he will stand again, Tala answered. Move. They moved. The ridge pinched down to a knife so narrow, Eli could step it with the edge of a boot and nowhere else. Chong. The far side, the spine widened to a shelf where backcountry grass showed in knife tufts and a black rock made a windbreak. They tucked the people in there a minute and breathed. Eli let the metal fall back into the ice where he'd found it and pushed snow over the gleam. Let the next wind tell the next man. From the south came the faint chuff of a stack pushing drifts. The plume showed at last, a smudge on the flat miles off. Engine crew feeling their way, maybe to a flag they themselves didn't trust. The smoke bent where the land bent. Not much. Enough. The kind of angle only a man who had drawn it would see. Eli felt something go loose in him he hadn't known was tight. Look, he said, barely more than breath. Tala looked. Her face didn't change much. The eyes did. You pull iron a finger to the right, she said. Maybe, he said. Maybe they read dollars and not mercy. I'll take either if it keeps boots off your ridge. Both, she said, or we keep walking. They didn't wait for proof. Hope is a fire you warm by. It is not a roof. Tala set them on the next leg, up through dwarf oak, clacking like bones, across a drift that wanted to slide down the lee where snow lay deep and friendly. Little Hawk threw a hand and dropped. A patrol line ghosted the low flats far west, too far to hurt them, close enough to hurry them. By late light they gained the last knob before the mesa fell away to broken country and safety. The wind eased, the cold didn't. Gray Fox stood with his hand on Eli's shoulder and looked back south where Old Crane lay in white. You carry, he said. I do, Eli said, and for once didn't hunt for better words. Tala faced him square. Her coat flapped and was still. Her hair had frozen white at its tips. She put her palm flat on his chest, hard enough to feel bone through wool. Roads longer than winter, she said. We go as one. He closed his hand around her wrist and felt the strong cords there, the heat still running under the frost. Reckon I'm all in. She nodded once, like a deal struck. The sun broke the weather then, low gold, mean to shadows and kind to faces. It poured light on the field roll under Eli's coat and on the small ones huddled under blankets, and on Gray Fox's smoke bowl, now cold and black. It laid itself on the far grade where the plume bent again, following the new survey's soft arc around the bad ridge, a little mercy writ in steam. From way back where the world was flat and men liked grids, a bugle tried for one more order and lost it in the wind. Up here, two figures stood near enough to touch and did not move, the space between them warm in a world that wasn't. Then they turned and started down the safe side, foot after foot, like people with work left and a way to get it done. Sun's down, fire's low, and the wind's finally lost its teeth. If this ride sat right with you, if the bell, the map, and that slow promise to hold close stuck, tell me with a simple mark in the dust. Comment 0 to keep riding, 1 if the train should bend farther. Tap subscribe and saddle up with us. I've got more trails to show you, quieter ones, hard ones, and a few where dawn comes soft over snow.